What may surprise you most about Havana is how African this place is. Maybe as African as anything else. The few square miles of Havana's Central District, a place full of spirits, African spirits, that are conjured up and channeled by the music here.
Bueno, estas canciones que más bien le voy a cantar a ustedes son canciones de la nueva trova. Me llamo Julio Julián Rodríguez Martínez. Vivo en un país libre.
And in Cuba, the music is its own language that speaks with the force of history. It is as rich and varied as the people in the landscape, and telling the story of this country's triumphs, failures, hopes, and dreams. And hope in Cuba is not an impossible concept, just a complicated one. In Fidel Castro's Cuba, your life is largely regulated by the whims of the revolution. You may have little choice in where and how you live and what you do.
Soy feliz, soy un hombre feliz y quiero que me perdonen por este día los muertos de mi felicidad.
But in music, there is ultimate freedom, which may explain why this small nation, even under communism, remains one of the most powerful musical cultures in the world.
Y si esto fuera poco, tengo mis cantos que poco a poco vuelo y rehago habitando el tiempo, como le cuadra a un hombre despierto. Soy feliz, soy un hombre feliz y quiero que me perdonen por este día los muertos de mi felicidad. Soy feliz, soy un hombre feliz y quiero que me perdonen por este día los muertos.
Aunque ya no sientas más amor por mí, solo rencor, yo tampoco tengo nada que sentir.
Santa Maria Beach is a half-hour drive east of Havana. It has more locals than tourists. And here you're likely to find more stand-up basses and trumpets than stereos. Cubans like their music live, they like it spontaneous, and they like to participate. This is what is known as son music, one of Cuba's oldest and most important musical style. It's the musical ancestor of salsa, an urgent, conga-driven beat accompanied by flute, trumpet, and a guitar that's strung in a pattern called tres. Son is a 100-year-old folk tradition that started in the mountains of Cuba. It's rootsy and passionate. Its lyrics tell of peasant love stories and romantic encounters on the beach. And you'll find son music everywhere in Cuba, from the beaches to hotel balconies to the smallest nightclubs and cantinas. Son takes you back through the peasant history of Cuban music. It's a foundation for musical expression here, pure rhythm, voice, and harmony. If ever there was a capital city that wasn't quite sure which decade or era it belonged in, it would be Havana, a city of vibrant, educated people making do with whatever they can get their hands on. Buildings on its famous Malecon are in a continual state of decay or repair, it's hard to tell which, and cars are repaired, driven for years, and fixed again. Ironically, the glory years of the American auto industry live on here in Cuba, country the U.S. has no official relations with. Spare parts for everything are hard to come by, and if it can be fixed or stuck together somehow, it'll be done. Access to a steady supply of government rum is almost a right of citizenship for many Cubans.
The people Cuban like in the room, and in my country, in the fabric, in the room, yeah, in the suka. It's okay? Okay.
Rum is to Cubans what red wine is to the French, a national drink, and they drink it everywhere. Cubans don't lack the basic necessities, though. Their street markets are a bustling, well-stocked affair, and beyond the staples of rice and beans, there is abundant fruit, meat, and fish. For professional entertainers, making a living and getting exposure outside of Cuba is the hardest thing they face. Latin Millennium is an Afro-Cuban jazz band, an important and popular style in Cuba. Its players are some of the best musicians in Havana, led by Congo virtuoso Joaquin Poza. They are full-time musicians, and they want to bring their music to the world. In the past, Pozo has managed to bring his band to the U.S., but it was a brief and disappointing affair, a cultural exchange program that had them playing in high school gyms and living rooms. With a state-controlled media in Cuba and an embargo by the U.S., Breaking out as a band is hard, but Pozo is determined. In their private lives, Cubans are just as creative at making do. Where there's no money to go out to nightclubs or restaurants, Cubans will put on their own shows, if only for themselves and their neighbors. Chuchi Martinez is a former salsa instructor who remembers the time when Cuban dance troupes commonly traveled around the world and in the U.S. Those days are memories now. But on the rooftop of his central Havana apartment, his daughters and their friends like to put on their own shows at sunset. Moving to the beat of this music is the most natural expression of their country's art.
Video clip aquí en nuestro país. Thank you very much. Es vida y nos gusta. Es algo que lo llevamos en el corazón, la sangre, que nos gusta bailar música.
Cuba is the only country in the Western Hemisphere where communism took root. Fidel Castro's rule began in 1959, making him the world's longest ruling communist dictator. In 2004, the principles of Karl Marx and Vladimir Lenin live on, 90 miles from America's shores. The average annual income for a Cuban is $2,700 a year, more than in many countries in the developing world. But what Cubans seem to lack most of is the democracy other countries take for granted. Cuba is a country that has just one official party, the Communist Party. Elections to its Congress are held every 5 years, but with only one choice. The election of its perpetual leader, Castro, is all but assured. In a curious departure from the usual behavior of dictators, Castro's likeness is hardly ever seen on official state displays. Castro has said it would be an insult to the people of Cuba for a living leader to commission his own cult of personality. So instead you see Che Guevara and Jose Marti. To understand the rich fusion that is Cuban music and culture, look no further than the faces of the Cuban people themselves. Ethnically, more than half of Cubans are mixed race, mulatto, black and white. And while so much about Cuba resembles the developing world, its population, in other ways, looks like a modern Western country, with a low birth rate, wide access to health care and education, and a life expectancy of 76 years. But it's here in the countryside where you find the home of Cuba's least understood cultural force. In its rich valleys, seaside fishing villages, there is an echo of drumbeats heard from across an ocean, a rhythm that has been kept alive in secret for centuries. More than 1 million West Africans were captured by slave traders and brought to Cuba to work the sugarcane and tobacco fields. And while their freedom was lost, one part of their identity they held on to was their faith in their gods. With the overwhelming power of Spanish Catholicism and slavery hanging over them, the original Afro-Cubans found a way to take parts of Catholicism and embed it into their traditional faith. What emerged over generations was a new religion for a new world, the way of the saints, Santeria. Santeria has come a long way from being a completely hidden, completely secret faith. White curtains in homes often mark the area given over to a small place of worship, where the matted feathers and dried blood of sacrifice remind Santeros that the gods are close. Bracelets of colored beads are worn for the personal god of each Santero, and in many homes you'll find the small talismans that speak to the powers of each god.
Fuck, that's true.
The
Babalawa is the Santero priest, presiding over the connection between the living world and the Orishas, between descendants and ancestors. And from the rhythm in his voice, you hear a connection to an ancient beat, literally the voice of the gods. Santeria helped carry the rhythms from Africa, and those drum-based musical styles form the core of all Cuban music.
Bueno, caballero, esta es mi casa. Me llamo Joaquín Pozo.
Joaquín Pozo's specialty is Latin jazz, and from it flow many of the styles we know as Cuban or Caribbean. There can be jazz in many forms, he says, but there's no Latin jazz without the drums. 3 drums gives you Afro-Cuban. 4 drums is Latin jazz. Pozo has lived this music scene since he was a child. His father was a famous Cuban musician, and he's a graduate of the National School of Arts. And when there's time and money, Pozo and Latin Millennium will go to the recording studio. But right now, there's no time and little money. It's a saying in the world of Santeria that there is no change without sacrifice. A young woman, 18 years old, pregnant with her first child, is about to be blessed in a ritual form of sacrifice. Her family is with her, and together they work through the ancient steps of the ritual. Chickens and pigeons are the most popular animals to meet their ends in sacrifice. Only the Babalawa can complete the act, and without his guidance, it's not considered proper or safe. As some Santeros will tell you, blood is so powerful, you can't fool around with it. The blood gives strength to the gods, the Orishas, and to the people who are making the sacrifice. Through the power of blood and the power of rhythm, the gods are brought closer, and their message and protection, or even stern lectures, are brought to the world of the living. And through the offerings of food, rum, and wisps of cigar smoke, the gods will be content, life will be better, and change will be for the good. But sacrifice isn't the only way to commune with the gods.
La 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 la.
Drums, too, can entice the spirits and bring them down into the bodies of the worshipers. At events like these in central Havana, Santeros and Afro-Cuban musicians come together in a convergence of music, dance, and spirituality. When the rhythm sends a Santero into a trance-like state, it's here that the gods, or even ancestors from centuries ago, briefly step into the body of a living person. There's another saying among Santeros. How can you ring a large bell with a small stick? How do you get the gods' attention without singing loud and dancing hard? If there's any great showcase of the rich cultural currents running through Havana, it's here at the city's premier hotel, the Nacional, home to beauty queens, foreign tourists, and the local heroes of the Havana music scene. While it's an extension of what you see in the streets, here it's a high-end affair with glitter and lights and thousands of adoring fans. Pio Leiva is one of the icons they've come to see. While he's been singing traditional Cuban music for decades, it took the popularity of a film like Buena Vista Social Club to truly give him a presence abroad. And more like Leiva are sure to come. When Latin Millennium take the stage at Havana's most popular jazz club, it's not just the expert technique that's being showcased, but a fusion of their cultural roots with styles from elsewhere. Their Afro-influenced jazz may be the perfect genre for transmitting the angst of a people who've been restrained for centuries, whether by slave traders or communist dictators. But you also hear the lush beauty of this country and the warmth of its people.
Esto no puede ser no más que una canción. Quisiera fuera una declaración de amor, romántica sin reparar en formas tales que pongan freno a lo que siento hará raudales. Te amo, eternamente te amo.
While there is hope for better times in Cuba, the future is terribly uncertain, and the talents of this passionate and vibrant people will remain somewhat hidden from the rest of the world, certainly from the United States. But the people you see here will carry on in their own way as they have for many years, living under a repressive government and being misunderstood by the rest of the world is nothing new here. But maybe soon the rest of the world will understand what's going on. A place full of rhythm and spirits, Havana Centro.
Ese temor de hallarme descubierto, tú me desnudas con 7 razones. Me abres el pecho siempre que me formas de amores, eternamente de amores. Si alguna vez me siento derrotado, renuncio a ver el sol cada mañana, rezando el clero que me has enseñado. Miro a tu cara